My name's Aaron Wise. I've been in mortgage banking for 25 years now in the Chicagoland area. My idea with getting this podcast off the ground was really trying to get good, solid information to people that are either thinking about getting in the market or they are in the market right now, and maybe they're even having a hard time. So today we have Deb Hess from Compass Real Estate. Hi, Deb.
Hi.
Deb is an industry veteran that has been doing this for a good while now, and I feel like you have frankly, just a ton of value to bring to the table for people that are out there looking, whether they're looking to buy or sell.
Okay.
So, the main reason why I wanted to have you on here, besides you're lovely, is to have us.
Your camera ready face.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Is us really just talk to a potential consumer about some things that they can really grab onto that'll help them be prepared to take this market on.
I think that's great. And I think there are so many consumers out there right now, whether they're first-time home buyers or downsizing after 30 years, and they kind of don't know where to start and aren't sure what to anticipate in the process.
Yeah, and your phrase there, don't know where to start, is absolutely key. I feel that, I talk to people that are buying, $1 million places. I talk to people that are buying $80,000 places, whatever it is, suburb, city, multi-unit, condo. We're all fishing in the same pond. We're all looking to have the same questions answered. And I feel like there's something a little disarming about that, knowing that, okay, we're all just trying to get good, solid information so we can make the right decision. I'm one of these people that, I don't know about you, but I won't even have dinner somewhere unless somebody told me that I need to go and I need a referral.
A good referral is
Yes,
key.
yes. And so, now we are in this, 2025 era where everything is online. There's so much information. There's so much terrible information. People are relying on TikTok and Instagram and the internet probably way more than they should. And frankly, I think that we should acknowledge it's hard to get good, concrete info to make a good decision.
So if we can present a little bit of just tidbits of what our current clients are going through and what we've seen in the marketplace, hopefully somebody else can benefit from that.
Agreed. Agreed. One thing we were talking about earlier as we were just kind of prepping was that no one really teaches us how to do this stuff.
It needs to be a curriculum.
I agree. I was even joking that, back in, I remember whether it was junior high or high school, we learned how to balance a checkbook and how to write checks, which I haven't written out a check in a few years. But I feel like this is one of those things where it's kind of interesting. It's the biggest thing that someone is probably ever going to invest in.
The most important decision that you'll make.
Correct.
Around your financial assets.
Correct.
Probably.
And people are relying on TikTok in order to make those decisions. Right. And so to me, we are not the bright, shiny object that's going to be on the internet for a while and then go away. This is not a temporary video. This is something where I think the information that we're going to provide is going to hold up, whether you are going to purchase in 6 months or 6 weeks or a year from now. I feel like the information that we're giving is going to stick and it's going to be relevant.
The market will fluctuate.
Correct.
The market will fluctuate, but the process is essentially the same. We're going to steer the ship differently depending on the market conditions.
You got it.
But when you're working with somebody who has experience and has done a lot of business in varying market conditions, they can act as your Sherpa and guide you through whatever the terrain might be to make it as stress-free and smooth a process as possible.
One thing and one sort of exercise that I'll go through with a potential buyer is, I'll tell them, because there's so much information out there. And again, this is, CEOs that make $1 million a year, they have the same questions as someone that's making $18 an hour somewhere. We just want to know 2 pieces of information. This is it. We want to know, A, what's my payment going to be? And B, how much cash are you going to need to do it? So short pause. That is literally financing 101 right there. We can talk about interest rates and tax credits and closing cost credits and earnest money and all these things. You could find them the perfect home, has gold-plated faucets, it's half off, it's in the perfect neighborhood. But if I deliver a monthly payment that's uncomfortable, the music stops. Right? Or if they find the perfect place, it's all set up, it's in the kids', school area, and we can't piece it together because they have to bring a little bit more than what they wanted to at the closing. We're dead. So to me, I feel like if I'm a consumer, I need to focus in on those 2 key pieces of information. As long as those 2 numbers are where they need to be and they love the home, the rest is going to take care of itself.
What occurs to me when you say that is that's the financing.
It is.
Right.
But it does play into what you're doing because one can't work without the other.
Well,
right?
and it makes me think about the process of somebody who is selling a home in order to buy one.
Correct.
because you need to back up a few steps in order to arrive at what that monthly payment is going to be.
Agreed.
And I mean, we help people visualize what their next home will look like if they're trading up, let's say.
Yeah.
And we start with that vision, and then we figure out what their home is worth.
Yeah.
Because you've got to do one in order to do the other. And then they come to you and get pre-approved based on what we feel their market evaluation is for their current home.
Yeah.
And with that information, they can get pre-approved, and we can begin the search process.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, I mean, I'm sure you get those calls pretty frequently. You've been doing this for a while, to the point of where a lot of your clients have real estate to sell and they do want to buy something. I'm sure the question comes up nonstop, which is, okay, we either want to downsize or we want to get something a little bit, let's say our family is expanding. We have, a 3-year-old and one more kiddo on the way, and we're in a 2-bedroom condo. And how do you start that conversation when it's, we have a place, we want to buy something new? Where do you go with them? I know you touched on it a little bit, but what's the first?
I mean, really, the vision is the first.
Yeah.
You need to know where you want to be in order for us to figure out the path to get you there.
Yeah.
Right? So the vision of what your next property will look like, what your timeline is like, what do you feel you can do in terms of the transition?
Yeah.
And then we begin to, I always find it's better to help people start looking at properties even before we touch the idea of their sale, because that helps them form the vision.
Yeah.
So there's some work that goes in up front to exploring neighborhoods, exploring property types, and then they begin to form the vision, and then we can then shift our attention to, okay, now we know there's something out there that can satisfy your goals for your family, you and your family, whether that's going from a big house to a condo because you're downsizing after 30 years, or buying the bigger home from the condo because your family is growing. And then the next step is, okay, we see the vision. Now, how does your current home fit into that and help you achieve those goals? So what's the market value of your home?
Yeah.
How much do you have to spend to get it ready to prep your home, to stage your home? And I like to call it the magic of the parallel prepping, right? So while they're looking, they can begin prepping, and we can lend resources because we have general contractors, we have all sorts of people.
Yeah.
And I get in there and really talk to them about, okay, here's your list of things that I think you should do. And if you do this, like we did with my seller on her home on Avers, it was this value, let's say $400,000 if we don't do any prep, and it was $485 if you spend $25,000 to get it ready. Those numbers also play into what your numbers are going to look like, right?
Is that sensitive? That's something I just don't deal with. When you go into someone's home and you say, hey, I think you need to do A, B, and C. And I know you're a veteran, but still, it's got to be slightly sensitive at some point, right?
It's the market appeal, right? I talk to people about, look, I love this. I love your colors.
Yeah.
But the broader market appeal is going to be something a little more neutral.
Yeah.
And if we just put a little backsplash in this kitchen, it's going to give it a lot more pizzazz, going to make it, if you paint your cabinets off-white instead of this dark cherry, which was very popular in 2005.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to have a broader market appeal. So I try to take it out of what it's
not emotional.
It's not emotional.
Decision.
It's a business decision. It's not your taste or my taste. It's what the market sees as the most appealing, because we want to, bring in the largest number of people and make your property appeal to them.
Yeah.
In order to sell it at the highest price in the least amount of time.
Which is the goal.
Right.
Yeah. So then your next step is, okay, well, if this is the plan, how's the money going to work?
How's the money going to work, right? So a lot of people now, especially in the current market, and now we're talking about current market conditions, the low inventory makes it essential that people get creative, and that's where you come in.
Yeah.
Like we had a client, a mutual client, that was downsizing and very nervous about it and afraid he wasn't going to find the place that he could land.
Right.
So he worked with you to do a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, and had that money ready for the down payment.
Right.
While we were simultaneously prepping his house to go on the market, and knew that he could buy something without selling and then sell and then pay that HELOC off and essentially pay cash for the condo.
Yeah. The parallel prep is where it's at, I feel like. I think if you're telling people to do that up front, they just need to be ready to do 2 transactions at the same time. I think mentally, I think people can definitely do that. It is a lot, but I think if you have the game plan in place, it doesn't have to seem like it's a lot, right?
I feel like most buyers in this situation
Yeah.
are much more comfortable if they can buy first and then sell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people are not because of the financial ramifications. So
Right.
maybe some people are more risk adverse
Yeah.
and would prefer
Yeah.
to sell. And we can work out a situation oftentimes where the new buyer is allowing them time to rent back.
Yeah.
We did this, actually, we were on the other side of the deal with Eric and Jackie,
Yep,
right?
you got it.
Their sellers needed time to find something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were very generous in the offer that we wrote to give them plenty of time to rent back. I think we gave them like 2.5 months
Right.
of rent back. So we closed, they had the money available to them so they could go and buy their house and know that they don't have to be contingent on their sale.
Yeah. And so that's the whole key, right? So if you are in this market right now and you are looking to purchase, you more than likely will not get an offer accepted if it's a contingent offer and you have to sell your place first.
Absolutely.
So the key here is trying to figure out, how do we make your offer a non-contingent offer, right?
Right.
And so to me, the conversation usually gets steered towards, okay, are you going to buy first? Are you going to sell first? Or are you going to essentially do them both at the exact same time and line those up
Well,
to happen?
right. A lot of people will actually buy with a long closing date,
Right.
knowing with no contingency,
Yep.
but if their home has a lot of demand, if their current home will be easier to sell,
Yes.
especially if they do all the prepping that we're
Yeah.
suggesting,
The parallel prep, yes.
then it's possible. It's possible,
Yeah.
and they definitely can close both deals at the same time.
You got it. So the key here is, if you get in that position, is being able to prep a non-contingent offer, which there's essentially, what that means is you don't need to sell your place in order to buy. And there's really just two things that need to happen or two boxes that we need to check in order to make sure that's okay. Number one, does your income support having two mortgages or two homes at the same time? And then number two, do you have the down payment, whether it be big or small, just enough of a down payment in order to make that new purchase work if the sale didn't happen? So if the answer is yes, and we can check off those two boxes, your offer can go in non-contingent. And this is where I think there's a little bit of confusion. You can go in non-contingent. It's harder to secure the buy than it is the sell, right? So in other words, it's harder to find the place that you're going to buy and live in for the next 5 to 10 years than it is to put your place on the market and sell it. So if you can secure the buy side contract, and let's say it has a 45, 50-day contract to close time frame on it, you can immediately, once that place goes under contract, you can immediately put your place on the market if it's not already.
Well, and this is where Compass got the perfect solution, which is our 3-phase marketing.
You got it. You got it.
And that allows me to put somebody's home in the private market on compass.com only for a period of time, and still gauge demand, because we can see all the Compass agents that are putting it in a collection for their client. And if somebody's marked interested, if somebody's made comments, a client has made comments. So it's really comforting to that soon-to-be seller who's about to make a purchase that, yes, there will be demand for my home. And it allows us to also go in and test maybe an aspirational price during that private period. And so we get out of the private exclusive as they're getting closer to being photo ready, and we go into the multiple listing service private network. So we've broadened the scope of the number of agents that could be looking at it, and we can still see the level of demand and interest in the back of the multiple listing service. But we're not on Zillow, we're not on Realtor.com, and the key is they're not gaining market time.
Right.
This has been working so well for my clients.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that too. So what ends up happening is, because of that exposure, they end up having their property go under contract, the property that they're trying to sell. And usually what's happening is those two property contract dates are lining up with each other. So even though you went in non-contingent on the purchase, the sale is happening. So what's happening is you're taking the proceeds from that sale, putting them down on that new purchase. So your loan amount that we got you pre-approved for shrinks by the approximate amount of proceeds that you're walking away with from the sale. So you're really just accomplishing everything. You're kind of threading the needle here is what you're doing. And God forbid if something would happen and that sale wouldn't happen right away, let's say the buyer of the place that you're supposed to sell loses their job and they have to pull out, and you can't close on that sale at the same time, you still can close on the purchase when you are supposed to. You can still have your place sold after when you make that purchase, right?
Sure.
And then once that, so this is all worst case scenario, which is nice to know. Then what'll happen is once you make that sale, you can take those proceeds, you can throw them down on that new loan that we just got you. And a lot of times we can adjust that monthly payment based off that new principal balance with something called a recast, right? So let's say you sell your home, you've got a couple $100,000 burning a hole in your pocket. What am I going to do with this? Well, if my loan that I gave you on this new home was $400,000, but you have $200,000 sitting here from the sale that you just helped them with, we can take that 200, put it on the 400, shrink that payment down to where it would have been.
So that's a
happy.
recast, not a refi.
Correct. So a recast is where we essentially, this is a servicer, we can't promise this is going to happen,
Right.
but most servicers will decrease the monthly payment based off that new principal balance without adjusting interest rate, without requalifying
Nice.
credit checks, any
Okay.
of that stuff. You're essentially filling out a piece of paper. Usually they'll charge you a couple $100 to do it and finagle the numbers. You wire the money in and new monthly payment. So
Great.
that's what the market is right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have to have a team that's prepped and familiar with that process, because if you do not, that's a lot of detail.
It's a lot of
You know?
detail, and it's a process. It's
Yeah.
a process that you need to get comfortable with upfront.
Yeah.
And, I feel like a lot of people who are, just kind of searching on their own, and they really don't understand the intricacies of the sequence
Yes.
of
No, I agree.
events and how important it is to do your power bid, for example.
Right,
I've been
right.
encouraging even my first-time buyers to go in and get fully approved so that they're almost like a cash offer.
Yep.
I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. I think
No,
that's
you're
the
exactly
beauty.
right.
Then when we're in a multiple offer situation, which is not uncommon these
Right.
days, it's subject only to appraisal.
You got
Right.
it. You got it. So the putting an offer in when it's a non-contingent offer, so just calling it an offer non-contingent for a minute, that's one of those things where when you put an offer in on a property, I like to say there's about 7 or 8 levers that you need to pull on in order to help you win versus the other 3 or 4 offers that are in there already, or whatever the number is.
I have my
right?
strategy for these situations
For sure.
too. Yeah.
And we're going to dive in there a little bit. But I think, number one is your offer better not be contingent.
Sure.
It might go without saying, but we're saying it. It needs to be a non-contingent offer. Moving right into the power bid piece, when let's say there's 5, 6 offers on a property, if your offer goes in with a letter from my company that says the loan is done, we're not going to underwrite the credit, the income, the assets because it's already underwritten. We need a contract, home insurance, title, which usually takes about 7 days to get in, and maybe an appraisal, depending on whether or not we get an appraisal waiver.
Depending on how much they're putting down, right?
You got
If they put 25 or more % down,
Yeah, then the odds are pretty
you're
good.
getting a good chance
The
at
odds
an
are good.
appraisal waiver.
Yes. That approval is a differentiator. And I feel like everything that we're going to talk about here in this next little segment, as far as those levers that we can pull, they're differentiators. It's, okay, if there's a multiple offer scenario and there's 7 offers, why is someone going to go with our offer, meaning ours, versus the other 6 or 7 that are out
I
there,
mean,
right?
aside from the fact that you're going to call the listing agent.
Yes, and our shockingly good looks and sparkling personality,
Besides that.
right? Leaving that to the side.
But I mean, there are intangibles, right?
Agreed.
And that is one of the intangibles that I think that we've mastered.
Yes.
Surprisingly, and especially, this doesn't happen as often in the city, but if agents don't come to the property to show their own listing, it's critical in my mind that I call them and establish a rapport with them. I mean, having done this in Chicago land for almost 34 years, there are few people I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thankfully, most people I've had great interactions
Yes,
with.
it's a small world out there. I
It is
don't
a
think
small
people
world.
realize how small
right.
of a tight-knit
That's right.
community real
It's
estate is, and that can backfire on you really quickly if you don't treat
extremely
people.
important to be good at your job and close your deals and follow the process and be responsive. And as a listing agent, I know who those people are. And so when I see an offer from somebody who I know has that reputation or that I've interacted with, well, we had an example of this summer when we sold the house for Sam and his family.
At the Berwyn house?
Oak Park.
Oak Park?
Oak Park, yeah.
Yep.
And I had a transaction with the listing agent over the past summer.
Yeah.
And it was smooth as silk. So I think in that multiple offer situation, that had an impact.
Yeah.
It was one of, as you say, distinguishing features of our offer.
I remember taking a call.
Mhm.
I was running around Florence, Italy at the time, and the listing agent called and said, "Hey, we want to go with your offer. We want to work with you and Deb, but we need so, and so,
Mhm,
right?"
mhm.
And so to me, that felt like, okay, we're at the top of the heap as long
Yep.
as we can check off a couple quick
Right,
boxes. And I feel
right.
like that's pretty validating. To me, it's about the reputation for being able to perform
Mhm.
and get to the finish line,
I
right?
mean,
A kind and respectful manner. But I feel like it's the reputation for just getting it done. If I'm a seller, the one thing or the thing that I'm most worried about is a buy side pulling out for
for
whatever
sure,
reason.
especially if you're the seller who's buying something else.
You got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is an absolute
Yep.
domino effect
Yep.
that happens within that scenario all the time. And so to be on the positive side of that and hear, essentially, we want to work with your team. We just got to hone in on these,
A few
couple
boxes.
things really quickly.
And in that situation, if I recall, one of them was the appraisal gap
It
addendum.
100% was.
Right.
So to me, that is everything in a nutshell. Just quick freeze frame right there.
Mhm.
If you are a buyer right now, you have got to work with somebody that has the reputation
Mhm.
for being able to perform.
Well, and to know what to recommend to make your offer, to find those levers that is
Yeah.
going to make your offer stand out.
You got it.
And I mean, a lot of people don't even, when I talk to them, especially first time buyers, they don't even know what an appraisal gap addendum is.
Yeah.
And I recall in this situation, the buyers were very concerned. We did, just to explain it, an appraisal gap addendum says that we know we're bidding over the list price, and therefore we're going to assure the seller with this addendum that we will make up a certain amount of the difference.
Right.
In that case, I think it was $25,000.
Yeah, that's about the magic number, right?
A lot of times it is. And they were very concerned that they were going to actually have to put that money into the deal.
Right.
So through careful analysis and looking at the other sales that went on in the neighborhood, well, we can't promise because we could get an appraiser from, Podunk, Iowa, who doesn't know the area and come in with some random number. But
For sure.
most often, especially when you're working with an established mortgage company,
Yep.
the appraisal companies are very professional and good.
Yeah.
And we assured them that, it's the likelihood of you having to put all that $25,000 is not very high.
Right.
And in fact, they didn't have to,
Yes.
which was a sigh of relief.
Yes, they were happy campers about
They
that.
were. But
And I
that's not the only thing, right? The appraisal gap addendum.
but
I
that's a big one, right?
That's a big
I mean,
one.
I haven't seen a deal come together in the last, I don't know. Well, I don't want to say I haven't seen it, but I'm going to say 80 to 90% of purchase contracts that come together are for sure multiple offer.
Mhm.
And if they are, they have an addendum that's built in there
Mhm.
for an appraisal situation.
Mhm.
If you are putting 20, well, even 5 to 10% down, you still
Mhm.
have a little bit of leeway there if an appraisal comes in short. But sellers don't really want to hear that. I think they
Right.
just want to hear,
They want to know
We're
the
gonna-
number
we're
on
gonna
my
be able to work it out.
contract is going to be the number I close with.
you got it. And I think $20,000 right now is the magic number for a gap.
Mm-hmm.
But that gap going in non-contingent
Mm-hmm.
and going in with a fully underwritten loan, those are three huge things, right? What would be next on your list?
Yeah,
do you
the other
think?
thing is condition.
Sure.
Right? Because as a seller, right, the seller is concerned about, are you going to come back and negotiate with me after the inspection?
Yeah.
So what my team and I try to do, and because we have experience with rehabbing and construction in general, we are very diligent about learning all of the age of all of the major mechanicals.
Yeah.
When was the roof done last? How old is the furnace and air conditioning?
Yeah.
Appliances, those major
The big ticket
the
items,
big
yeah.
ticket items.
Yeah.
And with all of that information in hand, we can comfortably recommend to the buyer, you can go in and say, we're going to do an inspection, but the new contract, the new Chicago Association of Realtors contract says inspection with no requests or inspection with requests.
Yeah.
You're signaling to the seller, we have enough confidence in the information that we have, and with our knowledge of maybe how old the roof is and when we would anticipate fixing it, we'll calculate that into our numbers, and we're going to tell you we're not coming back with requests.
Yeah.
Unless something major comes up that wasn't disclosed or
Right.
we had no way of knowing, and then, of course, we would want to talk about it.
Yep.
And that seems to be the reasonable approach that most agents are taking and that most sellers are aware of.
Yeah, and I do like that clarity now in that new contract
Me
because
too.
before we would always say as is.
As is. What does that mean,
And
really?
everybody
Yeah.
says as
Yeah.
as is. And then if something comes back that's big, it's not as is anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of like, okay, well, at least we've drilled it down a little bit more.
For sure.
But I feel like if I'm a buyer and I'm going to go in as is, I want to know the differentiation there, because that is a little intimidating. Oh, I can't ask for anything.
Right.
But if I know, okay, I'm not going to ask them to fix, $150 leak underneath the sink.
Right.
But if I find out there's a landmine in there, we've still got some recourse. I'm okay with that. That's just kind of what the market is, right? Unless we go back to 2011 or something.
Right.
That's just kind of where we're at. So I feel like most of the time, everybody can kind of fall in line there and have that be okay.
Right. But the key there, I think, is gathering the information up front.
Yeah.
So the buyer is really aware and can make an informed decision.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. When you're talking about that preparation, shifting gears back to the financing piece a little bit, I have found that the quicker we can make that mortgage contingency come into play, the more competitive the offer is. So for example, I mean, if we go back however many years ago, most contracts were 45, 60-day contracts and mortgage contingency 30. Nowadays, it is close in 21 to 30. How fast can you get the mortgage done? It's not even we're going to set the date. It's, Aaron, how fast can we get it done? If we go in and we power bid that thing up front, I'm comfortable with saying we can get a mortgage in 10 to 12 days, especially depending on A, if it's a condo, we need a condo approval, and B, if we need an appraisal. Most sellers do not want to close in 10 days.
But they want to know that the mortgage is done.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. And so then we're going back to, okay, if we're a seller, what's the one thing we're most afraid of? And that's the buyer not being able to perform. Usually there's two tasks there. There's one, the inspection, and two, the financing, right? We're essentially taking one of those out of the equation. So then all they're doing is they're focusing in on the inspection. And if I'm a seller and I get through that inspection, I get through attorney review, and I know the buyer's financing is good to go unless they get fired, we're in pretty good shape here, right? So if I'm a listing side agent, I want that mortgage contingency to be as tight as it can possibly be. So if we can deliver a 10, 11 day contingency on it, even if we don't close for 30, 45 days.
Everybody breathes easier once the commitment is done.
They sure do. Commitment is done, rest easy, and maybe close early, maybe not, but at least throughout that time frame, everybody is cool, calm, and collected. So those keys are, I mean, I think being flexible with your closing date is another massive one.
That's the final thing that I think is a good component for people in a multiple offer situation.
You got it. And it goes both ways.
Giving flexibility to the seller. If you're the buyer presenting an offer, again, information is key. What's the seller situation? Are they looking? How much time do they need? Are they doing an estate sale so that they need to get rid of a bunch of stuff in there before they can close? And then allowing either through the closing date, but again, if the seller is looking to purchase, you're often better off with an earlier closing date and a rent back. And maybe you can talk for a minute about the whole grace period. If you close before the end of the month, your first payment isn't really due until
the beginning of the following.
The following month, right?
In other words, if you close, what are we in? We're in April. So if you close any time in the month of April, doesn't matter if it's the 5th, 20th, you will get the following month off. So no mortgage payment due in May, first payment due in June. That comes into play when you're talking about rent back scenarios, when you're talking about, our lease is good through so-and-so a date. It's good to know what those dates are and how to back that stuff out. But I've seen an offer go in where we will say, hey, we are super flexible. Seller says we can't close for 75 days. If you go in and you're thinking, hey, fast, our offer needs to go in and we'll close as quickly as they can, as everybody wants to, sometimes that isn't necessarily what a seller wants to do. So the key is, and you already said this, it's listening to what the listing agent says is I call them hot buttons.
Right. The sweet spot for the seller on closing, on rent back. And with that grace period of the 1 month mortgage payment, it either helps a first-time buyer who might have a lease, as you say, that doesn't end for a couple of months after the closing, or a buyer who's going to let the seller stay and offer no rent for the first month. Because really, you don't have a payment in that first month.
So it's delivering terms that are friendly. So I think when you kind of go down that punch list, if you're hitting most, if not about all of those items.
Mhm.
Most of the time, the listing agent is going to communicate with you about what those things are, what's important to that selling side, and they're going to share that information in order to make it so the offer, when you put it in,
Mhm.
is a good deal
Yep.
for everybody.
Yep.
Right? I think having those conversations with your buyers up front, and I always try to prep this so that way when you go in and put that offer in,
Oh, yeah.
they're not hearing things that are, brand new. We've already
My-
talked about escalations.
My buyer
and
consultation covers multiple offers and
You got it.
what are the key components of
Yeah.
a strong offer, your winning offer.
Yep. So we'll reiterate all
mhm.
that stuff so that way, because frankly, a lot of this is an information dump. When you do that consultation,
Mhm.
sometimes their hair gets blown back and they're just like,
Mhm.
whoa, that is a lot of stuff. But then if I go in
Mhm.
and I'm able to double down on those really key pieces, and then your offer goes in and you're tripling down on those key pieces, by then we're ready to roll, right?
It's like education philosophy 101. You've got to
Yes.
keep repeating the same information so that people have a comfort level.
Agreed.
And
And once we do that, though, I
Yep.
feel like they're ready to go. They've got the tools in the tool belt.
Yep.
And that's how you win, right? It's covering that high level stuff. So that way, once they find the place that they love,
Yep.
we've got our numbers dialed in, we've got our strategy dialed in. And that is, again, the key to the entire thing. It's handling that stuff up front. So when it's time to go, and I always say this to everybody that I talk to, you never want to be in a rush, but you better be quick and efficient. That is the key.
you need to be ready to pull the trigger.
You need to be
Mhm.
ready. You don't need to rush, but you need to be
Right.
ready. And a lot of times, being first in the door
Mhm.
can help.
Mhm.
It really can. You might not be offering the most, but if you have a flex closing date and a quick mortgage contingency date, and you were the first one to put the offer in, and maybe Deb knows who that listing agent is, and they know that we are going to close and get the job done, those things stack up all of a sudden, and that's a pretty compelling offer.
It's been working for us.
Agreed. Agreed. So
It's
let's
been
keep
working
on.
for our clients.
Yes. Yes. So I think that's a good summary piece, is when those buyers are going out, keep those things in mind. And I feel like if you are touching on all those things as you go through, you're going to have success, right? We're going to start putting the wrap on this thing. If anybody at home wants to hear or talk about any other topics, trends that are going on, this is the first of many. So we're going to reconvene here and really just try to give you guys more and more value as we move through this crazy, wild, tumultuous market here in the Chicagoland area. If you want to reach out to me, again, my name is Aaron Wise. Best method for reaching out is either call or text 630-531-1833. Lock me in. And if you happen to forget, I'll be the first person in your phone. Aaron and Deb, you want to tell people how to reach out to you?
Sure. I'm Deb Hess at Compass, and the best way to reach out to me is a text or a call, and my number is 773-865-3327. You can also hop on my website, which is www.deborah.hess.com. If you want to get some information ahead of time. But I love receiving texts. Just say, hey, I'm going to be looking for a house and wanted to talk to you about that, or selling my home and wanted to get your idea on market value, just shoot me a text and I'll hop on a call with you.
So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for coming on here with me today. We work with a lot of people, and most of those common themes and questions that come up have to do with the fact that it's just hard to get good, solid information out there.
Well, and it's hard to find advisors
Right.
that
Right.
are experienced and can be trusted, where you can have peace of mind about the process. And I think that with our experience, our combined experience of over 50 years,
Yeah.
and lots of sales,
Yeah.
we have the knowledge, and we know how to, again, going back to the Sherpa, be the guide.
Yeah.
And help people manage the process to avoid the obstacles and make it as smooth and stress-free as possible.
Agreed. I think those numbers that we put up are important, only because I think it attests to the fact that we've helped a lot of people through a lot of different scenarios. We have seen a lot of those different things that are out there. I don't think it's about we do the most or we're third in line or second. I think it's just about we have the experience of helping people buy multi-units and condos and single family homes and
In many
suburban
different
homes in
markets.
different markets. And all those different things give us that range of experience that we can apply to whatever someone's situation is.
Well, and I tell people all the time, I'm still learning every day.
Agreed.
Every transaction, every situation is different.
Yeah.
And if you're paying attention and learning and thinking, well, how can I use this to benefit my next client?
Yeah.
Then that's how That's how people can comfortably rely on us as being the experts.
You got it.
Mhm.
Well, Deb, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. It's been my pleasure for sure. And to all you watching at home, I think we look forward to doing this again. This is clearly the first of many. And each time I get one of these going, I want to bring as much value to you as I can. So thanks for watching.